Welcome to this video on tips that will help you clear the new 4.7 floor 12 of Spiralabyss. Firstly, we will look at the overview of all the enemies. Firstly, we will look at the overview of all the enemies. It is very clear that, on the first chamber second half, it's ideal to have the Hydro element, and that on chamber 2 and chamber 3's first half, single target damage teams excel. And unfortunately, many of the Hydro characters in those single target damage teams, like Xingqiu with Hu Tao as an example, are already taking up on the chamber 1 second half. And that can make it very hard to make a team throughout the entire floor 12 that can clear all 3 chambers when, maybe only like one chamber may only want a specific character or elements. However, you can actually make separate teams for each chamber of the Abyss. So, for example, I could get 3 stars on chamber 1, completely reset, start over, and you can literally get 0 stars on chamber 1. When you do it again, it'll still be 3 stars. And so let's say I do it once, 3-star chamber 1, restart, make a whole new team just for chamber 2. If I get 0 stars on chamber 1, then get 3 stars on chamber 2, the chamber 1 will still save as 3 stars, and then I've just gotten 3 stars for chamber 2. And you can keep doing this for all 3 chambers. And so you can just make a new team for each chamber, and that can make Abyss so much easier for people who are struggling with this Abyss. So for example, let's say in chamber 1, like on the second half, you would prefer to use Xingqiu on the second half because he has a lot of Hydro application to break these shields. That would mean if you had single target damage teams like Hu Tao Xingqiu for chamber 1 and 2 first half, you wouldn't be able to, because they're on different halves. However, if you just, make a separate team for chamber 1 and then make a separate team lineup for chamber 2 and 3, you can now split up your Hu Tao and Xingqiu on the proper halves that you want. That is ideal. So maybe the first time you run chamber 1, you have like your Hu Tao Xingqiu team on the second half, and then for chamber 2 and 3, they're on your first half instead. And this is an example where you can do that and it'll actually help you. Additionally, when let's say you're restarting to make new teams for separate chambers, you can actually preemptively prepare for the other 2 chambers. Like let's say, for example, I restart to do 3 stars on chamber 2. When I'm doing chamber 1, I can take my time and make sure that I have all my characters bursts, make sure their energy is full before chamber 2 to give myself an easier time as well. For this specific Abyss, only chamber 1 first half has multiple waves and multiple enemies at the same time. So having a team that can deal with multiple enemies would be more ideal. But as for chamber 2 and 3 first half, it's just bosses. So you could clear, chamber 1 with like a team that's good against multiple enemies, and then for the other first halves, you can make a team that has really good single target damage. So moving on to the first chamber, I strongly recommend that you bring teams that can do some kind of AoE. It doesn't have to be best, but like options like Tainari or Yoimiya would have a much harder time compared to like maybe Arlecchino or Hu Tao, because they can at least do some kind of AoE. And for the second half, I would strongly recommend that you bring a team with lots of Hydro or at least Electro application to break the shields on this chamber half. Throughout this Abyss, for the first half, it doesn't really require you to bring any specific elements, except for maybe on the first half of chamber 3, it would be ideal to bring Electro so you can force the boss out of its invisibility state. As for the second halves, it really heavily favors Hydro, especially on the first chamber. The other 2, not as much. But you need so much Hydro application to break through these shields that it would actually save you a lot of time if you have more Hydro application. If that's unideal for you, then you could also do Electro. I'll pull up a picture to show you that, Hydro is best for breaking the shields, and then your next best option is Electro. So some example team archetypes that is good for the second half would be like Hyper Bloom, Freeze, and maybe even Aggravate. But that would be pushing it since, Hydro is more effective. On a smaller note, on chamber 3, the second half, some of these enemies have higher resistances against Electro and Pyro, notably the Agent and this Vulture and the Scorpion. They have Electro and Pyro resistance, so if you are using Electro or Pyro characters, you might have a harder time. So just keep that in mind while you're trying to make your teams. If you have Nila or especially Nuvolette, you will have a much easier time on the second half. If not, I would say like, you know, having characters like Xingqiu, Yelan, Farina, Kokomi, those characters are also really good at applying Hydro as well. So I'm going to go ahead and do a test run and tell you about my thought processes and show you guys some tips and tricks while I'm clearing. So for the first team, I'm going to use a Chevreuse Overload team with Arlecchino. And for the second half, I'm going to use a Nilo Bloom team. Okay, so here I'm going to choose the floor card because they apply to the every other floor. Here I'm going to use all my buffs so I can nuke with Raiden real quick. And then after that, I switch to Arlecchinos to continue the rest of the rotation. The Rune Drake will spawn backwards behind the first wave, and then you just continue using the rotation. This team's rotation is actually like pretty flexible because you're always constantly proccing Overload with, you know, the on-field and Raiden. Just don't forget to always use your Chevreuse hold E to actually get the buffs. Also, in general, if you're using Arlecchino, try not to use her burst unless you need the healing. It's not really worth using it to reset your E, because then you also lose the leftover bond of life you had. Here on this half, you always want to start your Nilo team rotation with her actual skill herself to actually activate the passive. Actually use her ult here to help break the shields initially. I'll also use Xingqiu for that same exact reason. And then, honestly, while using Nilo Bloom, just try to be watchful of your HP, especially if you're using Nahida as your driver, because she has a pretty low amount of HP as a character in general. So just try to be wary of that. And then always try to use Nahida's burst because it gives your whole team 25% of your team's highest elemental mastery. So that'll help with the bloom damage. And then always try to make sure that you have Nilo's skill activated. Here I actually use Nilo's sword stance instead of the aura stance to help apply more Hydro, as the third wave always goes in a line, so I can hit both of them. Applying Dendro to the power shields actually doesn't do anything because burning is just Pyro. But here I try to get Xingqiu's burst back up, and then I use Nilo's sword stance to try to continue breaking the shields. And yeah, you should be able to break these power electric shields pretty easily with this kind of setup. I didn't actually need to use her burst there, but I didn't pay attention to the shield HP, so could have saved that one. And just make sure whoever has Deep Wood on your team, in this case for me it's Baiju, just make sure that, you know, every like 10 seconds you just reapply, or make sure that he's applying Dendro to keep that Deep Wood debuff on the enemies. Here unfortunately I don't have the best card options, but I always choose the floor one because it applies to the next floor. So right here you can actually get particles from him even though you can't do damage, so keep that in mind. So you can kind of set up your rotation early, and then once he can take damage, I just start my rotation. I'm going to try to use Raiden to get him down to that first phase where he takes no damage, which is here, which is around a third HP. He'll take no damage for a bit. And then after a bit, you can start doing damage to him again. And then that's when I start using Arlecchino. And here he's already low enough, so I just use Raiden to nuke the rest of his HP and iframe. The first half of this Chamber 2 actually has much less HP than the second half, so try to give yourself as much time as you can for this half. Try to kill the samurai at the same time to prevent them healing the other if only one of them dies. You do have some leeway, but you know, still try your best to kill them both simultaneously. When it comes to these guys, the ranged ones, they tend to just like step away from you as you're up close to them. So try to position them in a way where like they're stepping back towards each other to keep them relatively grouped if you can, which can help you know save at least a few seconds. Here again, just make sure to watch your HP if you are using Yellow Bloom, because on top of the bleed and the bloom damage, you actually take quite a bit of damage. As you can see, my Nihita dipped to a red HP and almost died actually. Here, because I'm using an AoE team, I'm just going to focus on the target with the most HP, in this case, this spinning thing, and just let the blooms do the AoE, and hopefully that, you know, the others will die from the Seeds of Skanda, or just like stray blooms that will also kill them, and it actually ends up working out really well. Here, unfortunately, I didn't get the best cards again, but you know, just try to pick the best one. This boss is similar to Mago Kenki, where you can't really do damage to in the beginning, but you can still get particles and reactions off. Also for the Abyss cards, if you're not happy with the cards you have, like on the day you try it, you can always try another day, and the cards will actually change every day. So you know, you can kind of reroll your cards. I didn't have Raiden's Burst, so I didn't start my team's rotation with her. But then again, this team's rotates are quite flexible. Here I heal for comfort again, but you don't have to heal for comfort. You don't feel like it, I guess. And then here I just nuke the rest because, you know, this boss has fairly low HP compared to the other half. Okay, so in the Abyss run earlier, I accidentally killed it a little too fast, so I never got to its broken down state. So I'll actually demonstrate what happens, or what you should do when it does get broken down. So I'm actually gonna chill here before I kill it too early. But it'll get to a point where if you don't one phase it before it gets into the protective state, what's it called? You're gonna want to break these things. And after you break these, you'll see these green things. So what we want to do is apply Electro to the green things, and then it'll force this into a vulnerable state where you can actually do damage, and then now you can actually start doing damage to it again. I figured I would just put that in real quick to clarify for those who can't one phase it in time, so I just thought that would help. Here I recommend focusing the gunslingers, the people with the guns, because if they get their shield, they do become a little hard to kill. So if you can't kill them before they get the shields, that'd be the most ideal, but if you can't, it's okay. If you have Hydro, it can break the shields quite fast. Electro can also break the shields if you don't have Hydro. This actually works out kind of well because the agent actually tries to follow you because he's melee. So as you can see, we killed him with some stray attacks. Here against these enemies, try to focus this bird. He has the most HP, so if you have an AoE team, then your AoE attacks will do damage to the sea horses while you're focused on this guy. So just be careful to watch your HP if you are playing anyone squishy like Nihita. And same concept actually applies to these enemies as well. Just try to be careful and watch your HP. If you are struggling to survive, don't forget you can use burst as iframes to help evade attacks. On PC, you can actually press Alt and then the party member with the burst, and you can actually instantly switch to them and cast their burst, so it gives you invulnerability. Please comment down below if you have any questions or suggestions. I read every single comment and will try my best to respond to all your comments immediately. Please consider subscribing and liking the video if you wish to see more content like this. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in another video.